Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of the Township of Whistling, May 28th, 2025. I'm going to start with roll call. Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst,
Present.
Councilor Goida,
Present.
and Councilor Spillis.
Present.
This will begin our moment of reflection. Our moment of reflection, this way, possibly have confirmation of the agenda, please.
The council approves the May 28th, 2025 agenda and addendum as circulated, and that council approved the additions to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.1.6, questions received from council and the corresponding responses provided by staff. In the confidential verbal report regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and this is in relation to township of Wells.
Can I get a move for that, please? Councilor Spillis, Councilor Hurst, any questions, comments on that? Favor? That's carried. Before we get into the reports, I'll just give a friendly reminder that if you're having difficulty hearing the meeting or the councilors or anyone speaking, there's a process that's laid out on your chairs and your chair there. Please pick that up, be familiar with it. We just don't want to have disturbance from the others. Appreciate that. All right, I believe disclosure of pecuniary interest. Oh,
Yes, item 9.2.4, report FIM 2025-18 Township Group Benefits Program. The recommendation that the council directs staff to change the termination age associated with members of council group benefits coverage from 75 to 85 effective immediately will benefit me, and as such I cannot participate in any discussions related to this one aspect of the report.
Councilor. Any other disclosure of pecuniary interest? All right, we will move on to 10.3, CRO posting. We have Stan come down to the table, please. It's been good.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Nice to see you again. Great, go ahead. Summary, or are you just open for questions? This is the UG. Starting with UG.
Oh, starting with U of G. Okay.
Expansion,
Yeah, we don't have a lot of issue with the U of G. What they're doing is adding 2.5 hectares to their extraction area. This is 2.5 in addition to the 50 or so they already have, and it's going to make the lake a little bit bigger. But where they're doing it, doesn't make any change to any impact to Mill Creek or to any of the adjacent wetlands. So we didn't feel that there was any, from a hydrological perspective, we didn't feel that there was any issue with the addition of those lands to include those in the extraction area, other than the fact that there is a water well situated in that area that they need to decommission.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a recommendation for this? Yeah, you'll
Right now, it's just to receive for information.
be able to move that, please. So go ahead, any questions for the staff or Stan?
Well, let's start with the well. Where's that located? Is it on their property?
It is on their property in the 2.5 hectare area that they are going to extract.
And with respect to the issue we had with silting at the northwest corner, is that anywhere affected by this northeast corner?
Silting in the northeast.
Yeah, they're dumping up there.
So I believe it was a site plan amendment, historic. site
That's
plan.
for McNally. Sorry.
No. Sorry.
Okay.
They are depositing basically adjacent to the 401.
Yes, sorry,
My understanding is that was a site plan amendment for new silt storage. You may know, because you reviewed that site, but I'm not sure.
That's their Silt Pond 5, I believe. I thought it was always on the books. So, yeah, I bet this does not affect that at all. No, in any way. No.
Are we sending anything with respect to the CRO to Ministry?
So through you, Mr. Chair, so we're looking at 10.2 at the moment, I believe, right? The site
2.3. Did I do that? Yeah.
I was looking at the other.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for ERO 025-0235, so that's the license amendment to below the water table extraction. It's the comments as presented or amended, and the one above, that 10.2 is to be received for information.
Just a minute backwards. Sorry. I'm good. Yeah, was yours?
Yeah, I had 10.3 and then we went to 10.2.
Yeah, I thought we were just doing 10.3, but
That's what I thought too.
which is just the year posting and then.
Sorry, just looking at the way it's listed on the agenda here, just.
Because we've submitted comments on the,
We did, which was an objection. And then there was a second ERO posting that came up, which we do think that we should be submitting a second objection to. Only because we haven't received the detailed documentation for that one at this time, but we've requested it.
and is there anything we can share about our conversations, or do we know the official position of UOG on either one of these items? I know it's the same one essentially, but it's that site.
So I'd say not at this time, we don't have anything to share, but there could be information forthcoming from the university. And I do think that once we have the detailed review back from the, if anything changes, Dufferin has reached out to us and has asked for a meeting to discuss. But we do want to wait to see if we don't have concerns, and it would be a simple matter of withdrawing our objection.
So essentially, we're objecting in principle for more time until they provide the documents.
Correct.
That's great.
Yeah.
So with that being said, are we just receiving 10.3 for information and doing another separate one for 10.2?
Would be, yes, and then staff do have direction from council to object in principle to these without council direction, so we will be doing things.
Okay. So sorry, are we doing separate resolutions?
We have them with-
10.2?
Yes, we have them listed separately on the agenda, so we should just receive them. We can receive them.
So 10.3 is on the table. We have another seconder. Any further questions or all in favor? It's carried.
Do we have them?
Yeah. Really.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And then well, that was 10.3. We did 10.3 first. Now we're gonna do 10.2.
Okay,
Well, a machine.
so 10.2 is to receive for information.
Mover please, Councillor Hurst. Councillor Lewis, any further? Favor, it's carried. All right. Now, I believe we're going to do your Roselle report, which is RJ 933. The number's correct. It's in the reporting out, right? So the right one?
Yep.
Here it is.
I submitted a email this morning, Courtney. I don't know if some visuals would be helpful or not, but there's a little bit going on here that may very well need a look at.
Okay. I think you're talking about the water going.
Yeah.
I did see.
Yeah, that's,
All right, well, give it, well, she's digging up the visuals and sorry.
so there's a lot of history at this site. It was approved in 2005, 2006. And for the first time in the township history anyway, Aldo Salas recognized that there were areas that were not to be extracted in the middle of the extraction area. And so it was his suggestion to not zone those extractive. And so right in the middle between the lakes, there are two strips of land that are zoned non-extractive or non-below water table extractive. So they had to be maintained. And the reason for that is because at the time of going through all the discussions about the potential impacts, it was realized that if they made one big lake, that there would be a permanent impact on the neighbors to the south and southeast. And so by creating these barriers within the lake, it allowed the water level to step down slowly. And then, but at the upgrading side, on the southeast side, the water levels would be maintained pretty close to what they were pre-extraction. And the issue that, this is the wrong, yeah, that's the wrong one. That's
this one.
Mill Creek aggregates.
Or shows the.
And the issue that we're running into, is that during extraction, we definitely did see some impacts to the south and southeast. Despite the company building a hydraulic barrier around the southern side of the lakes. And yet we had a number of complaints about low water levels in ponds and private wells. And we've been discussing this with CBM for many years now. So what you're seeing there on the screen are the two barriers, left and right, which I identify there as possible breaches, but those are the areas that are zoned below water table extractive in the official plan of the Township of Puslinch County, Wellington. But their purpose was to allow water levels to rise in each of the lakes. And that's not happening because the barriers were not built high enough. What we're actually seeing is that the water level in the upper lake, which is in the lower left right-hand corner there, has reached a level and then it can't get any higher. So after extraction, we expected those water levels to rise and achieve close to pre-extraction limits, but they've come back up, but they've stopped dead. And the reason that I interpret they've stopped dead is because they're spilling over into the next lake. And that only so that is now affecting all of the water levels to the south and southeast of the pit. Now they've stopped rising as well. And so unfortunately, the not easy solution to it is to raise that barrier back to what it should be. You know, we're all kind of making estimates as to what levels should be and where what height the barriers, the causeways, shall we call them, should be. It turns out that they're lower than they should be. And yet on the site plan, if you go down a little bit further, Courtney, there you can see the red line I put there is where the predicted water level, predicted height of the barrier back in 2005, but actually the lake is already spilling over about a meter below that. So the barrier was not even built or left to be as high as it should have been.
So what are you saying, that they extracted the barrier, the top portion of the gravel lower than what they should have?
That's correct.
Because it wasn't that a barrier was constructed.
That's correct. They should have left a little bit more material behind. Yeah, and so that's and Courtney, if you continued further down, please. So there you see the barriers between Lake 1 and Lake 2 and Lake 2 and Lake 3. And if you just scroll one more down, Courtney, there's a groundwater level of a monitor just to the southeast of Lake 3. And you can see during extraction in the history of it is that it fluctuates by approximately a meter every year. And that's a normal groundwater fluctuation that we see. But in the last 2 years, since they've stopped extracting, there's maybe 20 or 30 centimeters of water level change. And that's as that final lake tries to achieve its final level. It's gotten there, but now it's spilling over and it's affecting all of the water levels operating from it.
Can you do me a favor? Can you just go to the screen and point to what you just described? The thing is easier
Sure,
for me when I see these things to understand what I'm looking at.
Sure. So under normal conditions, groundwater, these are water levels in the groundwater monitor. Under normal conditions, they vary by about a meter from spring to fall every year, spring to fall. Things change every year, and then they have been coming down a little bit because of the effects of the lakes. And we are kind of expecting that, we're hoping that not to happen because they built a barrier. But then, once they stopped extracting and lake.
Sorry about that.
Once they stopped extracting and the lake started to fill, well, it's filled to that level. And it stopped, those water levels have now stopped going up and down. And then if according on the next figure, there's the lake level. It's stopped dead. Right, and it used to go up and down, it rose to that level there, you know, a couple of 10 centimeters more than that, and then it just spilling over into the next lake, and it can't get, and it wants to get higher. Right, it's trying to get that, there's pressure, water pressure from the south and the east and pushing water into that lake. And if that lake was allowed to rise, then all of the water levels behind it would also rise and alleviate some of the issues for some of the neighbors. So it's an easy solution, well, not an easy solution, but the solution is to put that barrier a little bit higher. But that, sorry, not the barrier, but the space in between the two lakes, yeah. And by doing so, then you remove some of the original concerns that we had, and the actual concerns that water levels are lower than they should be to the south and the southeast of this pit.
Well, we would hope to see improvements to the, the residents' ponds and water, surface water levels. I mean, I don't want to commit that, that we haven't fixed the berm, the inner piece without actually seeing the data where it worked. Because I have concerns about barrier too. I don't know if this functions properly.
Oh, I don't think the barriers function very well. And so, but this would help with that a lot, because we're seeing in the first graph I showed you, which is a groundwater monitor, say several hundred meters away from the lake, it has also stopped. So it wants to come back up to a more natural water level, and it can't. So I think it makes sense that somehow that causeway has to be increased in height.
All right, Councilor Hurst.
Thanks, interesting, I guess, and maybe this is in your wheelhouse, Stan, maybe it's not, is this as simple as just adding more fill to the top of the berms, or does this need to be like highly engineered? I guess I'm coming at it from a lay position. Is it
Yeah.
as simple as that?
To Councilor Hurst through Mayor Sealy, yes, it's quite common to create a hydraulic barrier, for instance, by end dumping silt or material into a lake or adjacent to a lake, and that allows that water level to rise. And it's the problem is I think what I'm seeing from space is that there is an actual water sitting on top of that causeway and coming from, and what the water levels in the lake are telling you, that it's spilling over. So if you just raise the elevation of that causeway, then yes, then you're going to slow that down or stop it, and then allow that lake level to achieve its natural level.
I guess maybe my question of staff thereafter would be is the appropriate process to go through based on the recommendation here, and I'm not sure what that is, and maybe that's for a different conversation thereafter. But that's where my head's at, is needs to function as intended type of thing, and this seems like a pretty straightforward recommendation. One, that's it for me.
Good, that's good.
Just the causeway or the barriers, there's one in between like 1 and 2 and one in between like 2 and 3. Is it both of them that would need to be raised up by the 1 meter, or is it just the one you think between 2 and 3?
The obvious one is between 2 and 3, because Lake 3 has stopped rising. Lake 2 still fluctuates, but again, from a visual from the satellite imagery is that there seems to be water also spilling over between 2 and 1. Or between 2 and the wetland beside it, so, but Lake 2 seems to fluctuate under norm, about a meter every year, so it seems to be going up and down and having a more natural water level fluctuation, but number 3 is definitely not behaving normally.
And do you think that if those barriers are raised up by the 1 meter, that the water level could get back to the point where it was pre-extraction, or do you?
Not,
Are you thinking it will settle out somewhere lower?
I think it'll settle out somewhat a little bit lower, but now it's, what we're definitely seeing is the influence of that lake stabilizing at a level, and then the groundwater levels also stable. They're not going up and down either, the immediately adjacent groundwater levels, so that lake is definitely having an impact on its surrounding area. And there is a solution for it.
Thanks.
Which is, the barrier in the middle, you were responding to the mayor, and you indicated that you got excavated off the top of that for gravel, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the way I understand it is that the county planning designated that as a non-extractive zone.
Yeah, I'm trying to differentiate between non-extractive and below water table extractive. So I think they are allowed to pull the dry material off, but leave that causeway.
Okay, the other issue is the ground science report talks about back in 2018, we as council, through your recommendations, made some recommended modular changes and threshold recommendations, and to date, that hasn't been done yet. And
The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, or Ministry of Natural has not approved that to date. That's correct.
so, in your opinion, they're relevant to have those insist on they being made?
Not anymore. They're done. They're not extracting anymore. They did a very detailed ecological study of that area and satisfied me at the time anyway, that and Greg Shifley, who is the ecologist, that there wasn't an impact on the fisheries. The issue there was we were seeing temperature changes in the little springs that feed the Speed River, and they are brook trout habitat. And so our concern was, well, you used to have 8-degree water and now you've got 11-degree water sometimes to year, but the detailed study was done by their ecologists and reviewed by township ecologists and satisfied them that is a fairly minor water level temperature change, and also was only occurring right at one spot, right at the very top end of the discharge. And by the time you got 100 meters downstream, you didn't see it. So they did satisfy us, and the ministry, maybe it was just a matter of housekeeping. They just never got around to.
Okay, thank you.
The causeway level or height, what do we reference it here, ASL, or what's the?
Yeah, meters above sea level.
Is that indicated on the site plan? So have we checked the site plan level height for the causeway? And because if it was extracted below what's permitted at the site plan, that's a non-compliance concern.
The only reference I saw to that, Mayor, is a cross section, and that's the red line I put on the cross section, and I think it was 299.8. And that's my interpretation from the cross section, that the causeway should have been to 299.8, and the lake is already spilling over at 298.95, like a meter below that. So if it's spilling over at a meter below that, the causeway is not high enough.
So when we deal with correspondence, I want to identify that as a site plan compliance concern of the DNR, because they've extracted below the permitted elevation. It's probably the proper term. I have a note here, and this goes back to the wetlands that were going dry.
Yes,
And in the report, I don't remember the exact details, but it was speaking to salamanders and whether they were seeing as much nesting. I'm paraphrasing and probably not accurate enough, but my note is the salamander impact due to the extraction affecting the wetlands still? So, you know, we have concerns about the operability of the hydraulic barrier. Now we have this spilling over water levels. And if I remember correctly, the reports say that the wetlands are improving from our historically low drought year that they blamed it on in 22 or whatever year it was.
yes,
They're improving. But are we still seeing impacts to the habitat for that wetland due to this extraction?
yes, compared to pre-extraction, there may be, in 2022, for instance, there was, you know, no surface water showing up,
Yeah.
right? But now there are, say, months of surface water in the wetland, but pre-extraction, it was several months and everything. So we have definitely see a change and an improvement, but different than what it was originally.
And without giving away too many details, the local resident had a pond concern. The levels had been reduced. Have you had any engagement from that resident? Has she seen improvements?
I have not I called the resident, say, a year and a half ago, and there was improvement, yes. But again, so we did have a really bad year, say 2022. And I think I attended her site at that point. And there was some talk about deepening her, and actually the operator did engage with her and on a number of occasions, and I understand they're still talking but from what I see from the water levels, they have improved in that area, but then they've capped out, and there's opportunity for greater improvement than what's happening now.
Okay, no, I think we need to submit the city car report. I asked Courtney to pull it up. I don't really want to go through it by line when he strips the explanation, but do we have any indication that the causeway, causeway is a better term than barrier, because then we can.
Yeah, it's not a barrier. Well, let's call it causeway, yes.
Any indication in the car report of non-compliance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't had a chance to go through it in detail. But certainly staff can look at this prior to sending correspondence to the ministry and identify if there are any discrepancies that we're seeing.
So council, I would suggest, I don't know if we need another, say, summary of concerns, but according to the MNR local office, the new Minister of Natural Resources, and maybe we should start CCing OSSGA to show that we have non-compliance with their members, so they can't plead ignorance of what's going on with their members. And address that the wetland, and we could identify that it's improved, but it's not. I don't believe there's supposed to be no impact. When they pitched this to the community years ago, likely it said there wouldn't be post-extractive impacts that weren't at least not so palatable, but supported by some technological
Change of function and form and function is kind of the wording that it used to be with the privilege policy statements.
So we're not seeing that yet. We're seeing some improvement, which is good. So highlighting our concerns with the impact still of the wetlands. And be cautious about highlighting the concerns to the residents pond unless the staff can reach out. How you validate that would be another question, but deal with that one delicately, because I don't want to lose our credibility by saying, oh, there's an impact to a resident's pond still, and then they go knock on their door and they're like, well, it's better.
Right.
Just kind of, so we need to find out from them what they're experiencing. If that means you going out, I'm comfortable with absorbing that cost. And then site plan non-compliance with the lower elevation of the causeways is a major concern. Just highlight what Mr. Denhood is saying that we need for stabilization of the water levels of the lakes to get closer to, it operating or functioning as intended post extraction. So a lot to spit out, but does it?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the site is approved for below water table extraction. And I tried to find wording on the site plan that gave a minimum elevation of extraction in those causeways, and I couldn't find it, but I'm willing to take another look at that. And the only thing I did find was that on the cross sections. So the cross sections did show the causeway to be about a meter higher than it is today, so that may be the only thing we can hang our hat on.
Yes, and that's what I'm hanging mine on, is that if it's on the site plan,
Right, yeah,
you know, then we get into the, well, it doesn't say required, well, then why is it, then why is it on the site? So we can have those battles if they present themselves, but if all we can identify is cross-section indicates this elevation
right.
to support lake level at X, Y, Z, where we, always, the snowmobile guys, they always call it the American Z. And that's not what's on site, and we want it to mimic the cross-section.
Okay,
How do you wanna deal with it?
So I'll just, if you, Mr. Chair, read out what the recommendation is. That the report be received, and that staff provide the peer review of the Roswell Pit, 2024 groundwater monitoring report, and the 2024 ecological and aquatic monitoring report to the pit operator and the township local MNR staff for the review and response. And that council direct staff to provide the peer review of the PQA, 2024 groundwater monitoring summary report to the pit operator and the township local MNR staff for review and response. And the staff proceed as directed regarding preparing a cover letter to accompany the correspondence.
Sorry, did you catch that we're gonna send our concerns to our OSSGA, or is that premature?
So in the direction of the cover letter, we can do that. If you'd like it to go to the OSRD, I can put that specifically in the resolution.
So I'd also like to include a copy of the car report to the MNR indicating that the operator has not indicated any non-compliance. Because this is important, especially with new licenses from that operator coming forward. So it's just an example. Concerns?
Good with that?
Yeah, I just comment on the Blue report and the dance report on ecological. The Blue report covers off a lot of deficiencies in the dance report, but the dance report also has 2 recommendations. And I asked questions on that, and the township got a response back from our ecological ecologists, rather, and they agreed with the dance recommendations that the amphibian monitoring stations continue to be monitored and search for frog eggs. And if the water levels are monitored within the Roselle wet area on approximately weekly basis during May and June. I think those 2 are important to ensure the integrity of our water, the wetland. So I would just suggest forwarding our Boots report, including the recommendations of the dance.
So I know you called it a cover letter. And I intend to want to hear a summary. My concern is we're gonna send them these reports and it's a lot of reading. Is there value in just saying, here's the 5 points that are included, or is that what the summary would do?
We can do that, through Mr. Chair, we can do that in the covering letter,
Yes.
and just highlight maybe what the ask is. And then we'll append the backup to that as well.
Would you like me to assist with that letter? Okay, sure, that'd be great. Yep.
That way we can. The meet and photos of it, and then they can find the justification for it in the report at their leisure.
And we'll refer to the site plans. We can or cannot find established elevation for those, for the barriers.
Outside of the cross
That's
section.
probably, that's right. Yeah.
So going forward, now we're going to have to request that if it's not on site plans for every application going forward. If they don't support this as being part of their site plan and what they need to comply to, then every application going forward, we shall demand elevations on the site plan that are enforceable. This is what it transpires when we play these,
Right.
when we play these games, right? So. Okay. Any further comments? All in favor? It's carried. So I think that's it for Stan.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Good morning.
Have a great day. We were going to the auditors.
Yes.
5.
I did, well, good,
Thank you.
just getting caught up with the right paperwork.
Sure.
Are you ready?
We have the PowerPoint available to pull up.
I'm not sure if our director of finance has it, and perhaps she can share screen.
Yeah, I can do that.
Perfect.
Attached to the report too.
So as Director of Finance is pulling that up, I'll just first start by just saying thank you for the opportunity to present the draft audited financial statements. We will go through the PowerPoint presentation that was, I believe, included in the council package. Also included in the package are the draft audited financial statements themselves. Because the PowerPoint has most of the primary statements, I would propose to just go through the PowerPoint itself. But then if there's additional questions on the rest of the statements, I'm happy to address those afterwards. So just as we are waiting for that to pull up, I will thank Director of Finance Hassan and the finance team for their good work over the course of the year. It was a smooth, straightforward audit, as we've kind of come to expect since serving as your auditors again over the past few years. So thank you to her and her team for that. As we scroll to, I'll jump to the audit overview slide once you have it.
Okay. Sorry, Miss White Fox, is it showing properly on your screen?
It's not showing us the presentation view. It's showing us sort of, before you've gone into presentation view.
Seems to be full screen.
In my other screen showing it as presentation view. Sorry, 1 second.
That's fine like that.
Yeah, we
You
can.
can flip through like that. There you go.
Okay,
Perfect.
awesome.
Okay, so just to the audit overview. So just a few highlights from this slide. So our materiality and our audit plan are unchanged from what was presented to council in our pre-audit communication letter, which would have been sent back in the fall. Over the course of our audit, we go through a fair amount of work on internal control processes, as well as kind of the accounting policy judgments and all those sorts of things made by management. And I had no concerns from that standpoint, no significant internal control recommendations to make, or any deficiencies to communicate. In terms of adjusting entries, the only entries that we had that are now reflected in the financial statements rule was provided to us by staff. So oftentimes we'll get a trial balance, but then there's a few kind of cleanup things that need to be dealt with over the course of our audit process. Those were all provided to us, so we didn't come across anything that they weren't expecting, any surprises that came up in the audit. So again, thank you and kudos to staff for that. Moving to the next slide. Just gives a bit of information on the audit report. The audit report covers 2 pages of the draft audited financial statements. I can basically kind of summarize it in these 2 bullets to say that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards, which is the accounting framework under which the township reports its finances. And our audit was conducted in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. So we've met kind of the standards both in terms of our audit, and staff has met the standards in terms of their financial reporting that's included in the statements. Next slide just gives a bit of information on the statement of financial position. So this is kind of equivalent to the balance sheet that you would see in the business world, showing the assets, liabilities, non-financial assets, and then the accumulated surplus for the township at each of the December 31st, 2024 and then 2023 year ends. So some of the key things that we look at are cash position, taxes receivable, your tangible capital assets, and the accumulated surplus. And as we move to the next slide, you will see that. It's gonna be pretty small on the screen, so I apologize for that. But just a few highlights here. So looking at cash and portfolio investments, the top two lines in assets, up slightly, about 400,000 from 9.7 million up to 10.1 million. So pretty consistent from that standpoint. Taxes receivable has increased, and when we get to that graph, I'll kind of point that out. But there is an explanation for it. It's not a reason for concern from our standpoint, and so I'll explain that when the time comes. Other accounts receivable, you can see, are down by about 1.4 million. The reason for that is that you had a substantial grant receivable at the end of 2023. Just one of the grants that you had earned in 2023 related to some of the capital projects ongoing at the time, but the funds weren't received until after the 2023 year end, so sitting in receivables at the end of the year. Less grants this year that I'll point out when we get to the statement of operations, and therefore you didn't have a large grant receivable at the end of this year. In the liability side, you can see that accounts payable is pretty comparable to last year at 1.1 million versus 1.2. Little bit less in terms of capital projects outstanding at the end of the year, so less payables from that standpoint. The bottom liability is deferred revenue, so that's some of your reserves and reserve funds, those that are obligatory, meaning they're restricted by your gas tax agreement, Development Charges Act, and so on. You can see that the deferred revenue on that line has increased slightly. We will get into more detail on a future slide. So because you wind up with net financial assets that have increased by about 900,000 year over year. And then when we add in tangible capital assets that have also increased, then your accumulated surplus has increased from 33.8 million to about 35.2. And that's coming as a result of the surplus that we see on the year that I'll show when we get to the statement of operations. The next slide shows your cash position relative to your annual cash flow. So we do that as a percentage. So all of the cash that goes out from the municipality for operating costs, for capital asset additions, those sorts of things, and then compare that to your cash balance at the end of the year. You can see that that amount is about 100%. So basically you held enough cash to cover the full year's worth of cash outflows. That will vary pretty significantly. Notice in 2023, your cash balance was only about 76.7. The reason for that is your cash outflows are much greater in 2023. You spent a lot more on capital, but your cash position actually is pretty comparable this year to last year. The next slide is the one I had mentioned in terms of taxes receivable. Traditionally, you can see that the township has had a fair amount lower taxes receivable balance relative to other municipalities that are our clients. The blue line is the average of our municipal clients. The green line is the township of Puslinch. This is comparing taxes receivable versus the total taxes levied by the municipality, including those levied for the county and school boards. Generally speaking, we'd like to see that number below 10%, and traditionally your percentage has been in the 5 or 6% range. You can see that it jumps up to 11% this year. The reason for that is because of some significant adjustments for gravel pits and so on, levies that came in late in the year. So the increasing the receivables, but collected after the year end, just because of the timing of those levies happening. So it's not, again, it's not a specific concern. It's just the timing of some late adjustments to your taxes, tax balances outstanding at the end of the year. Generally speaking, the ministry would consider anything less than 10% to be low risk. You are slightly above that, but again, that was just the timing thing in terms of significant levies late in 2024. The next slide shows your tangible capital asset additions. In this case, we're comparing it to tax revenue. So this is how we're trying to normalize for different sized municipalities that are our clients. We have some that are a fair amount larger, some that are smaller than the township of Puslinch. So to try and kind of compare apples to apples in some of these slides, we use tax revenue as the basis, being, you know, how you're funding a lot of some of your expenditures and so on. So this shows that the green line, again, being the township of Puslinch, fluctuates as capital asset additions do from one year to the next. It is below the average of our municipality in 3 out of 4 years, but 3 out of 5 years. But you can see that in 2023, a fair amount higher. And if we take the average over a 5-year period, it's very comparable. So you're spending comparable amount to other municipalities of your size and in this region, relative to your tax base. I try to be very cautious whenever I make these presentations. As accountants, we look backwards, we don't look forwards. I can't comment on how much you should be spending or how much you should have in reserves and reserve funds to fund your capital asset additions going forward. This is just a relative comparison of how much you have spent over the last 5 years based on the size of the municipality. And again, it's pretty comparable. The next slide shows your capital asset additions relative to what you budgeted. So additions are in blue, what you budgeted is in green, and then your amortization is in yellow. Typically, we would expect to see the green bar be higher than the actual. So the budgeted additions being higher than the actual. The reason for that is that obviously some projects don't progress on the timeline you're expected. If it's in your capital budget for 1 year and you don't spend it in that year, it will be in your budget for the following year as well. So sometimes your budget will have the same project in twice. Therefore, we'd expect to see the green line be higher. So that's not really a fair comparison. But looking at the blue versus the yellow, your additions traditionally have been significantly higher than your amortization, which I think is a good sign that you are trying to fund your infrastructure needs as much as you possibly can and trying to stay on top of them. The next slide just shows the funding of those capital asset additions, the purple section being capital grants, the 2 shades of green being coming from reserves and reserve funds, and then the orangish is just coming from the tax levy. So essentially you're funding most of your capital asset additions from reserves and reserve funds, which is consistent with what we'd expect to see. Next slide indicates, just gives a bit of information on the statement of operations. So this is kind of your income statement for the year showing revenues and expenses. It does show actual results versus budget as well as versus the prior year. And expenditures are presented by department. And if we jump to that next slide, again, numbers are fairly small on screen. You can see revenues are down fairly substantially. Most of the reason for that is in the bottom 2 lines. So government transfers, again, you received less, did less in capital projects in 2024 versus 2023 and received less in capital grants. So that's reasonable and expected. You didn't budget to receive as much in capital grants in 2024 versus 2023. And then the other income line is down. You used less coming out of the Parkland Reserve Fund in particular. That comes into other income as well as some license and permit fees that were higher in 2023 versus 2024. On the expense side, you can see expenses are up from last year, but down below budget. Basically higher salaries mostly were budgeted for, so not unexpected. And then contracted services, some legal fees in 2024 that were higher than in the prior year and somewhat higher than budget in certain cases. You do wind up with a surplus on the year of 1.4 million. That is down from last year. Basically capital funding that's received adds to your bottom line because it becomes income when it's received, but it's funding capital that's amortized. So basically the expense hit follows afterwards. But you do wind up with a surplus this year that's smaller than last year because of the capital funding received in 2023. Next slide shows your expenditures by department. This is pretty consistent, and actually maybe I'll skip to the next slide, which shows expenditures by department over 5 years. You can see pretty consistent, and transportation services, not surprisingly, being your largest expenditure, with protection and general government being the next 2, and fairly comparable to last year. The statement of changes in net financial assets basically backs out the activity of your capital assets, so it just shows the changes in your financial position, ignoring your capital assets. And so if we jump to that slide, you'll see we adjust starting from the annual surplus of 1.4 million. When we back out the acquisition and amortization of tangible capital assets, that decreases your financial position relatively, and as a result, then your net financial assets only increased by about 900,000. So it's still an improvement in your financial position, in part because you spent less on capital assets in the year. Next slide just gives a bit of information on the statement of cash flows. So it's basically showing the change in your cash position. And if we jump to that next slide, I'm not going to go through this in any amount of detail, in part because it's very small on screen. I will just highlight two numbers. You are generating positive cash flow from your operating activities. So that is what we would expect to see this year, the tune of about 2.37 million. From that, then you have your capital activities. So your tangible capital asset additions, and then change in your portfolio investments, those both decreasing your financial position. So in net, your cash position decreased in part because you put more money into investments in the year. Next slide gives some information on the schedule of accumulated surplus. This is Schedule 2 in the financial statements. It's towards the end of the statements. Shows basically the breakdown of your overall accumulated surplus of 35.16 million. And here we can see that most of that being your investment in capital assets, not surprisingly, as it is with any municipality. Up at the top, just below the investment in capital assets, we have various other smaller amounts, unfunded post-employment benefits. That's just a liability that sits on your statement of financial position. It's not funded. You kind of satisfy those expenditures as they come due. Your general surplus is very comparable to last year, just under 30,000, up very slightly from 28,000 the year before. And then we have small surpluses for Barbers Beach street lighting area and the Cambridge fire area. And then down below that, we have your reserves. You can see that those are up by about 900,000 on the year. This excludes the obligatory reserve funds. We'll see that in a future slide, but those reserves are up, as I said, by about 900,000 year over year. Next slide is deferred revenue. So this is the obligatory reserve funds that I mentioned, as well as other smaller amounts. Basically, these are revenues that are restricted by various agreements or legislation, and therefore they show as a liability on the statement of financial position. Basically, it's money you've received for various purposes that you haven't yet spent. And if we move to that next slide, you can see the balance is there. So your development charges down slightly. You spent almost 500,000 out of development charge reserve fund, which is greater than the amounts received and interest income earned on that reserve fund. The Federal Canada Community Building Fund is what I still call the gas tax fund, even though it's not been called that for a few years now. But basically that balance is up slightly. You received more than you spent out of that reserve fund. And then the recreational land fund, you can see, is up again, spending less out of that than was received, including investment income. Down at the bottom, we have various other amounts. Those are just other deferred revenue. So taxation is amounts that are prepaid on taxes. So for those ratepayers who have paid in advance, that is showing to the tune of about 450,000, as well as some recreation and building permits received but not yet spent at the end of the year. So the last graph I will show you is reserves and reserve funds collectively. So this is showing the reserves that are included in your accumulated surplus, as well as the reserve funds in deferred revenue. And we combine them just to show the total amount that you have set aside in those reserves and reserve funds for future capital and other expenditures. Again, the green line being the township of Puslinch, the blue line being the average of our other municipal clients. And you can see that they follow generally the same trend and are pretty consistent. Green line is a little below the blue. That's not a concern from our standpoint. Again, though, we're not certainly experts on how much you should have set aside. That's more a matter of what's in your asset management plan and more the realm of engineers and your municipal staff than us as your auditors. So it's just showing the dollar value, and it is quite comparable ultimately. So the last slide just gives some information on next steps. So subject to your approval of the draft financial statements today, we would get our representation letter signed by management that will allow us to finalize the financial statements and then allow staff to submit the financial information return to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, which is due on the 31st of May. That said, thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you for the report. Want to read the recommendation first? Mrs. Seeley, please.
The report of FIN 2025-019 entitled Audited Financial Statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024 be received. And that council received the presentation from Murray Short of RLB LLP regarding the 2024 Township of Pleasant financial statements. And the council approves the following documents from RLB LLP. The audited report for the members of council dated May 28th, 2025, and the financial statements for the year ending in December 31st, 2024.
Great, can you remove it, please? Mr. Hurst, Mr. Boyden, any questions? Mr. Hurst?
Mr. Short, thank you. I think that was very comprehensive in terms of your update. I appreciate that. Yeah, and having it as a pre-read was super helpful. I think it teased out a lot of the questions. Only two that I have, is more just to comment. The first one, I really appreciate the benchmarking in your ratio analysis compared to other municipalities, because I think that as a counselor gives me a degree of comfort with what other similar municipalities are in terms of their spending, their ratios, and what have you. So I think I would certainly encourage that. I suspect in other presentations you do to other municipalities, that's probably very well received.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, my only other question for staff would be is the 2024 taxes that were that were not captured until 2025. And again, separate to this conversation, but maybe at an appropriate time, if there are any, red flags around that, maybe leave it to staff to have that discussion. I'll keep this one focused to the 2024 audited statements. Thank you.
Sure. That's good.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation today, and similar to what Councilor said, thanks for the comparisons. That is very helpful.
Sure.
And thanks to our finance team too for all of the work that went in. I just have two brief questions in one of the pages, not in your slideshow, but in the actual financial documents under other income. I think this says note 10. One of the items in there is called royalties, and there was nothing in the budget, but have the amount that actually is recognized as other income. And I was just wondering if you could what would be captured under the royalties?
Yeah, I believe, and your director of finance may correct me on this or confirm what I'm saying. I believe that may be aggregate levies.
That's correct.
You receive yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah. So you receive aggregate levies. I think they're not budgeted because, actually, I don't want to misspeak, but yeah, there's nothing showing in the budget for that, but that would be the aggregate levies that you
That
receive
makes
each year. Yeah.
And then
So we
the
do,
other-
sorry, I'm so sorry. We do budget for it under our capital budget, so.
Right, okay.
And then I'm not sure this, the general surplus, just under the 30,000 of
Yep.
the general surplus. Typically, we would put that to our asset management reserve. And I'm not sure, is that a separate resolution that comes later? Maybe this is a question for Mary, or is that through this, is that being?
So that is a separate resolution that comes later through our surplus report that I'll be providing with an analysis of where the surplus is coming from and how we're doing.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, two questions. First of all, we're going back to the taxes receivable. We have the anomaly you mentioned if we're over 10%. And you mentioned that's because of the deferred levies. Presumably, this year, when you do an audit for 2025, they'll reverse it or be It's considerably less than 10% as a result of
I-
the increase.
I expect so unless, again, it's always subject to if there's significant supplemental taxes right at the end of the year, if you get, an influx of MPAC reassessments that increase taxes. And you, just because of the timing those being received, if those supplemental tax bills don't go until December 20th, they're not gonna be paid till January anyways, but subject to that, yeah, we would expect to see that come down. I think it was a bit of an anomaly, and I think all other things being equal, you'd expect to see that right back down where it was previously.
And then the expenditures by department, you provided data from other municipalities as a comparator. Is it possible to do that in the future for our township as well? Specifically, called it the general government?
Yeah, so we haven't done that in the past to show what the percentages are for other municipalities. And the reason for that is that because different municipalities will have fairly significant differences in operations, it's hard to compare. So just to give an example, some municipalities have very extensive water, wastewater systems and some don't. Some will have, 4 or 5 arenas and much bigger kind of rec facility budgets and so on. Those things will, increase the weighting of expenses in those departments and reduce the weighting in general government, for example, or transportation or whatever. Some municipalities, they're, 60% of their expenditures are in transportation because they have, very little other operations to them. So it's a bit hard to compare that one, and I would be a bit hesitant to do so because it might kind of lead to kind of false conclusions as a result. I would say, I think we've been asked this by your council, but other councilors in the past in terms of whether they're spending too much on administration. I would say, looking at the dollar values, I would say no. I don't think you're overspending on general government or administrative costs. It's just, the percentage might be a little higher than some of our municipalities because they have more expensive kind of other departments that increase the percentage of those expenditures relative to the total.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's a bit hard. That one I would be very cautious to include in the slides.
Thank you for the report. I don't have any questions, so unless there's anything further, maybe all in favor. Scary, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate it.
I believe we're moving on to delegations next. Take a quick
Yes.
5-minute break while we bring down the delegations, and we'll likely lead into the report, so then we can. Great. I'll invite Matthew Moser and Paul Rose down for the delegation, please.
Good morning.
Morning, gentlemen. Floor is yours, where do you want to begin?
Okay. Excuse me. Well, good morning again, Mayor Sealy and members of council. On behalf of the Galt Sportsman's Club, I would like to thank you all for your continued willingness to listen to our concerns and work with us towards a solution that benefits both the township and its longstanding community members. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again today. The comments we bring forward today reflect our initial impressions following a second bylaw reading, where we still are working through the details, and we plan to be presenting a formal position within the next 2 weeks and after consulting with our membership. Today, we would like to highlight a few concerns and share the process or the progress we have made since our last delegation. And we'd like to ask your assistance to help with expediting the solution that we believe will benefit us all. The first point I'd like to bring up is the definition of point of reception. We do appreciate the good work that you guys have done on your second reading to help clarify the point of reception. However, this remains a potential concern for the Sportsman's Club Galt still, and we recognize and thank you for your efforts. And we will be putting again this into our formal submission. The next point that we'd just like to raise is the sunrise and sunset interpretations. This is an area that we're concerned about. about the proposed modifications and interpretations of sunrise and sunset. While we respect the merit for the township's suggestion for clarity, these terms are already clearly defined in the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act, which largely prohibits the discharge of firearms 30 minutes after sunset and 30 minutes before sunrise while hunting. The club has always operated within stricter limits, allowing shooting only between sunrise and sunset, excluding the extra 30-minute window made around the legally available time to hunters. The proposed interpretation, which could allow shooting as late as 9:20 p.m., does not reflect our existing operation practices. Additionally, sunrise in Pushlands never occurs as late as 9 a.m., making an alternate definition unnecessary and potentially confusing. This divergence from established provincial definitions could create unnecessary enforcement ambiguity for our members, bylaw officers, and potentially law enforcement. We believe this issue can be resolved clearly and efficiently, and we're looking forward to offering some concrete solutions in our formal response to help streamline this for all parties and the neighbors included. With regards to the temporary Schedule A, the revised temporary schedule is restrictive and restrictive to our members, and it would significantly impact our ability to provide a consistent recreational experience for an impact of our financial assets at the club. Well, we understand and appreciate the township's intention to include proverbial teeth in the bylaw as a measure of ensuring that we remain actively engaged in our noise mitigation efforts. It's important to recognize that many of the delays we are facing now are beyond our control. And the delays are largely due to onerous procedural requirements, permitting bureaucracy, site plan control process within the township itself, and we respectfully ask council to reconsider this approach in light of these realities and take the forthcoming formal response into careful consideration. Recently, we have worked with membership and adopted a holiday hour schedule. So I'd like to reaffirm that the Sportsman's Club Galt has recently voluntarily implemented reduced hours on statutory holidays, as well as Mother's Day and Father's Day as part of our ongoing commitment to this process. With our start times remaining unchanged, we have proactively adjusted our closing times to end earlier in the day, allowing holidays in accordance with the newly adopted holiday hour schedule. And the days that we've included these are Mother's Day, Father's Day, New Year's Day, Family Day, Good Friday, Victoria Day, Canada Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Boxing Day. And we have also planned to be closed. We've always been closed on Christmas Day, and we're adding Easter Monday to that schedule now. These adjustments were made in good faith and have been well received by the community. They were only possible through a strong effort from our board of directors and our legal committee, both whom worked hard to secure buy-in from our membership. With the new revisions of this bylaw not permitting club activities on these days, more importantly, when they fall on weekends, negatively impacts our membership and mainly the local membership we have at Pushlands Township, and where a reduced operation schedule has had positive feedback from the neighbors and our members, and we feel a good overall compromise. The club initiated improvements and investments. Since our last delegation, the club has continued making significant good faith investments to address noise and environmental concerns. Our membership includes many professionals who have stepped up when asked to contribute their expertise through newly formed and established committees. These committees, the three of them that I'll mention today, are our berming committee, which oversees the design and impact of our berms that we're planning to build. Our environmental committee, so anything that happens on the property now has to be run through our environmental committee to make sure there's complete compliance with Grand River Conservation Authority and township oversight. And we also have a sound committee, which his responsibility is to work with a newly purchased piece of equipment to monitor sound, as well as work with our other committees on sound mitigation efforts. In addition, we have implemented the holiday shooting hours across all fire ranges that I shared with you earlier. We purchased a state-of-the-art sound meter with calibration tools provided training to our committee members at a cost of over $25,000. We've invested over $45,000 in sound engineering studies to model our facility to guide effective noise mitigation. And we've installed sound dampening blankets on our outdoor restricted range with a positive test result. That test was cost us $20,000. Some of the upcoming mitigation projects that we're actively working on right now, and we're actively advancing further sound mitigation efforts, including we've retrained Grit Engineering to advise on berm construction and offer a second opinion on sound control effectiveness. And that's estimated between 25 and 50K. We've implemented a permanent sound reduction solution at our rifle range based on prior testing at the indoor range. This cost is approximately $55,000. That's commencing starting this weekend. And we will then be repeating this at our outdoor restricted range, providing it's as successful as we believe it to be. And lastly, for now, the board is approving the construction of an engineered sound wall surrounding our trap and skeet ranges and parts of our rifle and restricted ranges. And it's an ambitious project and it's budgeted at over $500,000. This major sound wall initiative was developed in response to Pushlintz's lengthy and rather complex permitting process that we are facing with traditional earth berms. While earth berms remain our preferred and most cost-effective option, this engineered alternative will allow us to act faster and reduce noise sooner, and in turn allow our members to use our facility with no additional restrictions and hours, provided we receive the support from the township to streamline this process. Permitting. Today we are here to also ask for your support in simplifying Pushlintz's restricted permitting process. While we respect the reasons for these processes, we are ready to begin construction now. However, our ability to act is being constrained by bureaucratic and site plan control hurdles. The most common concern we hear from our neighbors is that we are all talking, no action, and lip service. We are ready to act, but we need your support and help to do so. With respect for the community and our legacy, we recognize that the source of the sound that we are discussing today, the Sportsman's Club Galt, has a responsibility to take reasonable steps towards mitigation. At the same time, we respectfully ask the township to maintain consideration of our 70-year history of operation legally and in good standing at our location in Pushlands Township. We're not seeking special treatment, only a balanced approach that protects us from undue pressures or complaints that may arise from newer developments encroaching on our established and permitted usages. In closing, we remain committed to working in partnership with the township to preserve the character of Pushlands, while also protecting the legacy of Sportsman's Club Galt in the interests of our members. We believe there is a path forward that prioritizes accountability, transparency, and fairness, and we remain eager to be part of this solution. So thank you again for your time and your consideration. We will be providing a written submittal in the coming weeks. And we look forward to discussing this with council further. And I would like to yield the balance of my time to my colleague, Mr. Rhodes.
Do I have much time left, or I'm just?
I wasn't keeping track as a significant, community concern, so I was allowing you to speak, but try not to duplicate.
I'll be brief. Good morning. My name is Paul Rhodes. I've been a Pushlands resident for 25 years and a member of the Galt Sportsman's Club for about the same time. I just wanted to offer a brief Pushlands view of the club, maybe a bit different than you've been hearing previously. Including individual and family memberships, there are 70 Pushlands residents who belong to Galt Sportsman. That number may not be large in context of the entire membership, but when looked at on a per capita basis, there are more Pushlands residents that belong to Galt than any other municipality in Ontario. We're a bit different because unlike urban members, we have access, many of us do anyway, to acreages where we can legally shoot rifles and shotguns. I could target practice on my property. I don't because I can go to Galt Sportsman. The reason for that is the club's inspected It is approved. There are safety provisions throughout the entire organization. And the people who are allowed membership are vetted by the RCMP. We are required to pass firearms handling and safety tests. There's absolutely zero tolerance for unsafe activity or illegal behavior at golf. Now, meanwhile, on the east side of the township where I live, it's not that unusual to hear informal target shooting going on. When it happens, there are none of those assurances that the shooter is licensed, shooting safely. And from a community perspective, I think it's in the interest of the entire township to keep the club existing and operating. And we hear the assurances, and we're quite encouraged by that. But I think keep in mind that fewer people shooting at the club means potentially fewer people shooting in the fields and bush lots. Matt and the board have done a terrific job in bringing the membership along to understand the needs of the community and the residents. Initially, when initially when the bylaw was announced, a significant body of the members thought you were just trying to shut us down and that this was going to be the eventual result. They were adamant that we take a more aggressive and litigious approach to dealing with bush lynch, something that I wouldn't support. The board took a more practical approach. It turned down offers from outside organizations to make this a much larger political issue and invested their political capital in shifting a very skeptical and mistrustful membership into now, I would say, reluctantly accepting the need for change and the costs that will go with that change, which for the club will be approaching near $1 million. I think there's been good faith established by both sides. I'd like to see that good faith continue as a resident. And I think the way to do that would not be to add on additional restrictions over and above what you're currently contemplating now. I think it's very encouraging as a Bush Lynch resident to see cooperation in an era when, excuse me again, in an era that will both recognize the need of the club to exist, the benefit it brings, while at the same time looking at the legitimate concerns of the area residents. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
Paul. We're gonna receive that for information, so it's then we're a second agreement. So it is. Schools, any clarification? Anything else? No, I believe our intent is to move the done bylaws second draft up after we've completed all the delegations. Support that.
Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for your words as well. I just wanted to touch on something you said. You said that you were talking about the restrictive permitting process and the bureaucracy in the permitting process. And but you didn't really say what you meant by that. So I'm wondering if you can tell us what it is about the permitting process that you're finding to be bureaucratic and restrictive.
On the bureaucratic side, I was, thank you for the question. It was more coming on the lengthy paperwork that's involved. There were some new bylaws, I believe, passed in September of last year around the transportation and moving of fill. And there's been a lot of dialogue internally and back and forth with your staff on this. And this process is quite intense and quite costly. Some of the initial quotes that we received from engineering firms were, well into the six figures for the engineering and the support to go through this process. I do have a timeline that I can be happy to share with you on all of our interactions that we put together. And this is not a point we understand the reasons why you put and I live in a rural community as well. And the last thing we want is, bad fill being brought in. And so we completely respect the reasons behind these permits and bylaws that you put into place. but they're difficult, more challenging to work with.
You're speaking specifically of site alteration bylaw?
Yes.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, with respect to the fill, have you established a site where you're getting the fill from?
We have, we're working with one firm that, they will know where it's coming from. That's what they do all the time. And they do have all the proper, permitting for it, but I can get you that information.
With respect to the, your document you're gonna present to staff in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, what does that entail? What is it? Is it a 5-page document or is it just a summary of what you're intending to do? Is it a more in-depth saying this is the outline we see for the next few years? There's a schedule activity we plan to do. This is what we plan to implement and when.
Well, it's gonna be actually a little bit of both. Foremost, it's gonna be to present our formal position on how our interpretations and questions that we have for the second reading of the bylaw. Because I believe you're still looking for open dialogue with this. And secondly, we will give you the rest of our complete list of everything we have done to date. Which I shared some of it with you in the first delegation, and the rest of it I shared today, and the rest of the projects for the future that we have in line right now.
Thank you.
Excellent. Did you pen what you presented?
Was it good?
We'll get there.
I did a lot of it, yeah.
When I Google onerous, there's 2 definitions, and you were stating along the similar lines, Councilor Goyda's, I penned down something about the permitting, but you also used onerous in your presentation for, I believe you're referring to, the bylaw and the process for the bylaw. So there's 2 here that I quickly Googled. One says involving the amount of effort and difficulty that is oppressively burdensome, or the other one is involving heavy obligations. So I'm going to ask you which of those 2 definitions were you intending when you're saying that our bylaw and the process we're going through is onerous?
It would be the first one.
The first one,
Yeah.
so. I don't believe it is oppressive at all. It's our obligation as council to hear the concerns of the citizens, to put something in place that, as you stated in other parts of your report, that are, addressing your needs, their needs. So, and it is burdensome, but it's necessary, right? Because not this was ever the case. It could have been simply, we're just gonna try and shut it down.
We respect that.
So I don't like when those accusations are said to us. I think that we have been working with all parties in good faith, and when you put words of that nature in your report, it takes away from the good faith part of it. As similar with the permitting, it's challenging, right? But it's not the role of staff or myself to do the work for the permits for you. We can offer you guidance on that process. It's your responsibility to complete a permit application well, make sure it's complete. It's not our responsibility. And if they're not done well, and then it causes delays and problems, that's on you, not on us. And I do appreciate the relationship with everyone in the room. But when I hear that critique, I don't think it's warranted with us, so. That's why I put you on the spot. So you penned it, or?
I respect that. Maybe it was a bad choice of word.
I have some notes around the proposal. I don't feel it's appropriate to do it, to speak to them now. And, you did mention in your presentation, the new development concerns for point of reception type. I feel that's addressed with the current draft. There was a modification, I'm not sure, I'm assuming you're familiar with it, but my understanding of it is that it's in Cole's note, it's existing or is within a planning process currently. So if you have a vacant or somebody's proposing to build their house, then the point of reception would be where they're proposing it. But unless there's, and I don't believe there's any new development in the area currently that would fit that criteria that's in the report. And then it also addresses, future expansion. So I would suggest taking a deeper dive into that and as part of your next submission, being very specific on your concerns, because at this point, I'm comfortable with how the film reception is defined in the report. Anyways, I appreciate the presentation and I look forward to seeing the third draft, if I assume it's going to a third draft. We have another second. Okay, I'll do see it with you, all right. Great, thank you for the presentation. Wait. Pass. One down.
Morning,
Good morning, Morgan.
great today.
We're doing well, I think so.
Doing okay.
Great.
I will make my comments much briefer, and that's not a negative comment. I just that there was a lot of information there that was helpful. And comments are much more succinct. I had one question and then one comment, and then I believe that's all I really wanted to accomplish today. The first question I had would be the 70 decibel number in the bylaw itself. I was curious where that number was derived from, or what the reason is behind that. If I missed that in previous documents, I apologize, but I haven't seen the rationale for that. And then the comment or clarification I wanted to be aware of. At section 1.6 of the bylaw, and I believe it's mentioned again, 3.2. Yes, 3.2. Do I understand it that if the mitigation efforts are unsuccessful, and I sincerely hope they are, and for what it's worth, but that the council recognizes that those who may have issues or maybe aggrieved parties would have avenues to other regulations and statutes, such as the Environmental Protection Act. If that recognition is built into the bylaw, almost as if an avenue to redress any concerns that are not dealt with by way of mitigation efforts, and I think that's reasonable. But I would just like some comments on that if at all possible. I mean, those are the only comments I have at this time.
We just get a little better understanding, so if the 70 decibel level is adopted. And when for the MEC component, you're asking if they're not able to mitigate that, you're asking that is staff or township planning to embed in the bylaw support of the MECP's ability to investigate under the adverse effect? Is that kind of where you're going?
Yes, yes. More eloquent than I am there, but yeah.
No, I think I'm less eloquent. That's what I'm trying to just wrap my mind around it.
So to you, Mr. Chair, is it section 3.2 that you're referencing?
I was looking at 1.6 and 3.2, actually.
That's a pretty
Three.
loaded question.
I appreciate that.
The second one is at least, be sure I can get an answer from staff for you on the first one. Because I wanted to ask them it myself for clarification, but, in general. It's my desire to stay away from trying to regulate things that are regulated by other agencies. So similar to, hunting, for example. You know, for us to put in regulations above and beyond what people are permitted as a right through hunting. Be a very challenging conversation because there's higher level legislation that regulates something. Unless it's permitted in the, municipal act, it gets calm.
No.
So it's a bit of a fair question, but I don't know staff would feel comfortable answering that today. It might be a takeaway to do some research.
That's fair enough.
So through Mr. Chair, those sections that you're seeing in the bylaw are standard to be put in any bylaw. And that's simply because the township regulates what's under its jurisdictional authority to regulate. And so we don't, other than say, individuals are required to comply with all other applicable law. We're not in a position to talk about how other jurisdictions would regulate and enforce their own legislation. It's a simple standard clause that says, other applicable law applies.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And then the 70 dB, if you can provide a little explanation around that.
Yep, so do you, Mr. Chair, that's something that was taken out of precedent. So where other municipalities have passed similar bylaws, municipalities, it's good practice to look at what's been done, what's been tested. And that's where that number was recommended from.
And I'm going to put Counselor Secoulis on the spot here. If you're comfortable sharing, I feel like you did some research and some case law that you're familiar with. If you're not comfortable with it, I'm sorry.
Well, there's two aspects for it. I believe prior to 2012, the province had noise for shooting clubs in a piece of legislation. I can't remember the exact number, and they quoted that number of 70 dB at that time. When they enacted the NPC 300 guidelines, all that was taken out. So that is a precedent as well. My recollection of investigating Uxbridge, and I believe there's another shooting club called Claremont, yes, that's what they settled on as well.
Okay. Good.
Those are my comments.
I would just wait 1 second because I jumped the gun. and Put myself ahead of the other counselors, so I'll just open the. I'm just thanking for this. So. That's good. So.
Good, thank you.
All right, see you very please.
Yes, no worries.
Thank you, Lord, please. Counselor Hurst, Counselor Goida.
Yep.
Favor? That's carried. Believe we have the written delegations.
Written delegation are rather well.
Okay, and we get a mover and a second to receive that one as well. Counselor Hurst, all in favor? It's carried. And, oh, we were gonna attach, sorry, I jumped the gun.
I did, I included it in the motion because I heard council sort of give consensus on advancing the gun club report right up until after the delegation, so we can.
Oh. Cool, sorry.
Sorry, I know we've already now moved the written delegation, but the written delegation that we have in our agenda, it speaks to, a concern about the club not obtaining approval from the township to operate as a club and has been approved to operate as per Schedule A. And I was just wondering, and I'm sorry to put our CAO on the spot here a little bit, but I just was hoping that you could maybe speak to how the club has become legally able to operate in where they are now and how they are now.
So certainly through Mr. Chair, and this is to the best of the knowledge of staff, because again, we're talking about very old files, property files, just given the length of time that this club has operated and existed. But just generally, and this does apply to this property, legal non-conforming status, often called grandfathering. That's where a use existed and was legally in existence at the time that it started operating. And then what happens is that legal status that they have at the time can carry forward, even if permitted uses and things like that change in a zoning bylaw, given that they continue to operate. They have that legal status under the Planning Act. And so in this case, we're looking, you know, sort of beyond the 1970 bylaw that we had in at the time for zoning. Previous to that, this type of use was permitted within our agricultural zone. And so what often happens is where you have that sort of legal non-conforming status, when you go through zoning bylaw updates, comprehensive updates, things like that, you will often recognize those longstanding legal uses and you will apply them with proper zoning. So I do understand that the delegate raised in his written delegation that the normal planning process wasn't followed, there wasn't notification, things of those sorts, and that's the reason why.
Let me just, can I ask one follow-up? Great question, Counselor Goida. Has there been any significant changes since that 1970 date, according to the property in question that have been provided to previous council or administrators, and have any changes been made, or has it been quite static since that initial date that you referenced?
So thank you through Mr. Chair. That's a difficult one to answer just because the property files are for this property. It's a very old use. And when staff did look at this, there's nothing documented around significant changes. And I'd also note that the club's legal standing predates our site plan control bylaw. And so often when we do see changes to uses, that's how you would process those changes. But we have many properties in the township where we don't have site plan control agreements for the non-residential use, and that's simply because those uses predate bylaw. And the Planning Act does provide for that legal non-conforming status, just so that municipalities and property owners don't necessarily have to go through that very burdensome process when maybe we go through existed for a period of time.
Thanks.
I may follow up, from the residents, I've heard that the, shooting hours have changed significantly as, years progressed. It used to be a certain number of days during the weekend. It's sort of pretty well every day now.
So through you, Mr. Chair, it's, that's a good question. Typically, site plan control does not look at operations. So that's not something that's intended to be controlled. Site plan control looks at the way a property, is laid out. You know, there might be technical things around stormwater management, those types of things. Site plan control does not intend to oversee or provide restrictions on operations. That's typically done if needed through a licensing bylaw. And so that's what we're here looking at today with this bylaw as a licensing bylaw. So what has happened in the past around the operations is it may have changed, things may have changed over time, but we did not have a regulatory document in place to monitor that.
All right, can we read the resolution for EM 2025 that shows 22 where we go on shooting range bylaw? To get on the table. As I would do this is long.
So it's that report entitled The Shooting Range Bylaw, second reading be received, and that council provide feedback to be incorporated into the next draft at a future.
Okay, are you gonna move that, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis. All right, questions, comments, Councilor Hurst.
No, it's just, it's trying to absorb all the stuff that's going on. I would really like to see the sportsman clubs proposed changes type of thing. I think that would help, but I think from my standpoint, as we're in second reading, as it's written is fine, knowing very well that this will be brought up again. Sure.
That's good.
I don't really have any comments in terms of changes or modifications. I am just curious though about, and this might actually speak to one of the delegations, is that will there be, do you anticipate that there will be a sort of like a companion document to go with this that would entail like a complaint protocol and how we would go about dealing with that once the bylaw is in place, if there are issues that arise? What is the process for our residents to have it? I don't know. You know, verbalizing that.
Do you, Mr. Chair? Yes, that's something that the township's gonna work closely with the representatives from the gun club. We had something similar in place. If council recalls, it was more in the form of an agreement, but it was with Nestle Waters when they were still in the township. And it allowed for that sort of streamlining of complaints. And so we envisioned something similar. I think what staff would like to try to make sure we're not running into is issues around resourcing. So attending the site to take noise readings and things like that. There has to be some practicality sort of embedded into that protocol and how we're going to handle complaints. Most importantly, giving an opportunity to the neighbors, so the gun club being one neighbor and then adjacent property owners, to really work to try to sort things through without having it be escalated to formal complaints.
And that will be a separate, that won't necessarily be part of the bylaw, that will be a separate policy or document or
I think,
guideline or something.
yes, we envision that it will likely be some sort of a schedule to the bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah, two things. First of all, the period of 5 years, I asked a question, and the response was discussed at our last council meeting. This is the testing every 5 years. And I personally think we should have it a little bit more frequently, at least for each term of council, if not every 2 years. So I was wondering if staff could look at the frequency of that. The second, it relates to that. You quickly discussed the, trying to avoid complaints. But, if there is a baseline established and it is exceeded, is there a way of monitoring that? Like, well, one suggestion was made to have some remote, monitoring equipment someplace on a receptor close to, a neighbor that is, experiencing these things, these high level noise measurements. And the other thing is, if we purchase the sound level meter yet. And
So-
train staff.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's on our work plan to investigate and to look at what device would be suit our needs. So we're looking at all of those things and we have not purchased yet.
So you're looking at the, using that. So is it possible for the next meeting, we can have that schedule that, Councilor Goyd is suggesting, that would help, understand how you plan to enforce this and, sure the residents will be interested in that as well. Okay, there was item E on page 467, that suggests that, the request to council, this is for special events, that, they include the magnitude of the excessive sound levels and when during the day do they occur. I think that's got to be, included in the request of the gun club is going to go ask for a special permit to exceed the noise levels. We as councils should know what is that level and when is it going to occur. So I'd like to suggest we put that in there, and I'm sure the residents would like to know as well. And I mentioned a couple of housekeeping items, but I'm not going to go through take time, council time. So, in summary, 5 years, look at reducing it to something more manageable and then, putting in the, information council required to make a decision whether or not to approve, excessive noise on a particular day.
Okay. Just, I'm gonna bounce around, but on that, if through the dispute resolution mechanism, if something is elevated to the point where we have to do monitoring, then the clock should be considered the monitoring for that term, because I envision disputes coming through, doing some monitoring, and then it's the 2-year mark, just more monitoring, more disputes, more monitoring, like it'll be just a ton of money. So there has to be some sort of balance there that but the monitoring can't just, then it would all have to be hashed out, because if we end up doing monitoring for a week or, or pay some consultant to go there, then, or they pay a consultant to come, then maybe that can be accepted as that either through the dispute.
I don't have a problem on Mr. Mayor. I think the schedule that CAO's proposed attached to the next meeting report would bear that out.
Sure, and I think 2 years is too often, depending on how many disputes we receive. So flexibility, but once per term of council if possible. I hear the delegates' concern around sunrise and sunset. We've had conversations around that, and I'm supportive of where the township was going. I'm concerned now that depending on the schedule and the hours, it could be a conflict that if they're not allowed to shoot from 7, but then that is worded in there that you can shoot at sunrise. And I should have looked at this before, but I caught it now. The fall sunrise or sunset for December is 7:15. I have been in the bush a lot, and you're not shooting a minute after 5:25. So the sunrise really changes sunset. The Fish and Wildlife Act may give you what you're looking for if we can just point to that legislation, because it'll actually be shorter window because of the sunrise and sunset changing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and this is something that staff looked at quite a bit before putting this forward, was even perhaps removing the terminology of sunrise and sunset and just setting times and perhaps having seasonal schedules. What we're trying to do is lay it out so as to limit interpretation from staff and neighbors and the reader, whoever that may be. So perhaps we look at, does it just make sense to have seasonal calendars with times explicit in those schedules?
So I'll look forward to seeing that. The other component I heard about was the exclusion on on the statutory holidays. And I really enjoyed Mr. Rhodes' presentation and made me think that people could go to their residence with fire guns. So now we're gonna have, if we people work generally through the week, we're excluding these long weekends, we're gonna possibly have people all over the place. So my thought was, and put some consideration to it, is develop a schedule for the statutory holidays, could be an A and a B. And you choose half of them, and every other year, the exclusion switches. Because then one year you would get Mother's Day off. Next year you might get Father's Day off. And you can build it out that way, so just put some thought to that. And that might help the club for weekend use for their membership, so. All right, those are my comments. So,
Just want to pick it back, just escaped my discussion earlier. Our Councilor Hurst mentioned the fact he would like to see this report at the gun club school party. If there warrants a special meeting to discuss it, I wouldn't mind having that special meeting, because that might sort of shape some of the wording in the bylaw.
I'm assuming, I haven't seen it, I'm assuming you haven't seen it either. When did this come out? Friday, so I was hoping they would have been able to put.
And I'll leave it to your discretion. I think that's appropriate. If there's something in that you think requires special meeting, I don't know when you're coming back with your third bylaw, but I suspect sometime that's.
Mr. Chair, likely not June, but if we can bring it back in July and wrap it up, just depending on how the complaint protocol development goes, that would be ideal.
Okay. Any further? So we have another second.
I guess we did
Okay, all in favor? It's carried. Are we breaking for
much.
breaking, right? Excellent. So what time do you come back? 12:30? 30. All right, welcome back, everyone. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So I have a resolution, please.
That the consent agenda items listed for the May 28, 2025 council meeting be received for information.
Mayor Mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, any items to be pulled out? Councilor Hurst?
Just, there was a couple in the Q and A that I think staff were making recommendations. I think that was all I had.
Which items were they? Do you remember?
There with me.
I'll go around. Councilor Goyette.
Okay.
Councilor Spillis.
6, 9, 6, 10.
Okay. Councilor Hurst, do you?
So it's those two, 6.9 and 6.10 are both around Bill 5.
Those were the two I had.
Okay. All right, so if we can just receive the balance of those, please, all in favor? Carried, so I'll just go to Councilor Spillis, if you're comfortable, Councilor Hurst.
Yep, that's it.
Sure, okay, I'd like to propose a motion that's basically restating the Orangeville and Selborne Council resolution regarding Bill 5. It's talks to the issues associated with overriding local planning authorities with the creation of special economic zones, the repeal of the Endangered Species Act. And I can read the whole thing if you like, but it's up to you.
This way.
Okay,
So does your resolution capture both 6.9 and 6.10, right?
Yeah, that's correct. They're both the same, and they just you substitute each other's.
Yeah, you'll read it.
So whereas the government of Ontario has introduced Bill 5, Protecting Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act 2025, which proposes substantial changes to environmental planning legislation, including the repeal of the Endangered Species Act and the creation of the special economic zones that may override local planning authority. And whereas the Township of Plessis supports increasing housing supply and economic growth, but believes this must be achieved without undermining environmental protections or compromising the integrity of municipal planning processes. And where Bill 5 has proposed risk weakening safeguards for Ontario's natural heritage and reducing the role of municipalities in managing growth as in a responsible and locally informed manner. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Plessis opposes the provisions in Bill 5 that would reduce environmental protections or overriding the municipal planning authority, urges the province of Ontario to advance housing and infrastructure growth through policies that respect sound environmental planning principles and uphold planning tools available to local government, and directs this resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MPP Joseph Rodzinski, AMO, all Ontario municipalities for their awareness and consideration, all conservation authorities in Ontario and Conservation Ontario.
Okay, can you move for that, please? Mr. Schools, Councilor Harris. Any comments from the other two members? Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to find this before I forget. Okay, I got a couple. I sit on the AMO's Land Use Resource Task Force, and Bill 5 was one of the topics we met about last week. And I misunderstood. AMO released some comments on some other bills. I jumped the gun and sent an email to my contact for that group, AMO's representative. And I received an email either late last night or early this morning, assuring me that AMO was going to submit comments on Bill 5 and the concerns I raised, which I'll go through in a moment. And they're not for public release yet, so that's in your inbox with a link to the draft document. At the Land Use Resource Task Force meeting, I brought up all of those concerns that Councilor Spillis, you're highlighting here through these support resolutions. I got a little more in the weeds. I think we should add that it circumvents municipal bylaws as well, because that's very much so stated in Bill 5, so we wouldn't be able to regulate hours of use, noise, anything else. I mean, I'm sure there's a plethora of things that I'm missing, Ms. White Fox, but I think adding a line about, you know, not only of the planning of approving the use, but the control through the bylaws is problematic. I spoke specifically to that these SEZs should not be applicable to aggregate sites. They should not be applicable where current bylaw enforcement is transpiring as a way to circumvent compliance with current municipal bylaw and zoning. And I also stated that I didn't feel they were appropriate where an ECA was required for whatever use is intended for these sites. Because that tells me there's environmental precautions and concerns that need to be addressed, so to have a, you know, blank check to operate however you shall deem. And it came to light, I was thinking about it earlier this meeting, it also doesn't address the transferability, is that the right word? I'm envisioning worst case scenarios. So fire chief owns a lot and or a big swath of land, and you get an SEZ for fire trucks. Well, then James wins the lottery and I want to start a heavy industrial facility. What's preventing me from buying the fire chief's property and that SEZ designation and then starting a different use? So I understand this is going to, I guess, standing committee to hash out the details, but I don't know if other people are having that focus on the implications of these things. So anyways, I think having like a note about the bylaws would capture most of that, but even maybe a note about that these are not transferable or something along those lines. I don't know, but if I haven't even mentioned this to you before, because I just thought of it. Your thoughts on that are?
So to you, Mr. Chair, I agree. This motion really looks at the environmental protections as well as the planning tools. And so I think perhaps what we're saying is also municipal enforcement ability outside of planning, as well as maybe perhaps making a point where there is jurisdiction from other ministries, whether it be under the ARA or the requiring ECA, that this bill not be provided the ability to circumvent those processes. It's kind of what I heard, which.
Yeah. And that's actually how I used it when I spoke at the committee, was that if there's already legislation or oversight by the province in place, it shouldn't circumvent. Oh, and lastly, my thought was a note about that we would intend to further comment upon review of the AMO submission to the ERO. So they may highlight some items that, you know, none of us have thought of, and I want to make them aware that we're possibly intending to do a further review and submit another. Or do you think that's just
So if you, Mr. Chair, what we can do is, bring back that email's comments when they're available
That works too. Just
Yeah.
do another.
Mhm.
Okay, so council, I don't know if you're supportive of that or?
Yeah, well, this isn't a response to the ERO, this is basically a separate motion, but if you wanted to tie it into the ERO, we've already commented on those. Three EROs, I believe, last council meeting, so, I don't know how you want to link the two.
I would just leave it up to staff and so if Courtney's comfortable adding a couple bullets, you know. If they're already covered through the staffs, and I believe we just said, please submit, because it was such a short timeline.
Exactly.
Could also just pass this resolution today as council supports them for the debt. And once AMO writes their comment, that can come back to the consent item, and then we can write a resolution to support that and forward that to all.
My only concern is the timing. I don't know how long email's going to take to get their comments out officially, and then apparently this bill is moving fairly quickly through the process and it's at the standing committee. That would be my only concern, is waiting too long, but
And so then, we can add, in several places after local planning authority, municipal bylaw.
what did you, I think you were typing away. Did you do a little amendment?
So I was just, through Mr. Chair, I was working on the use of Bill 5. So opposing the use of Bill 5 where it may reduce a municipality's ability to enforce its local bylaws, and I was gonna put in bracket other than planning related bylaws.
Okay.
No, I'm fine with that, just.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
a-
fine, yeah,
it's a
yeah,
high
I'm
level
fine,
and
yeah,
then-
I'm fine, yeah, I'm good, yeah.
And then the second point would be around opposing the use of Bill 5 as a, to, I guess, supersede jurisdiction of other ministries' authority, and we could put such as the Agri Resources Act or environmental compliance approvals.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's important, not only that it shouldn't circumvent the environmental compliance approval, that these properties shouldn't be eligible for an SEZ if there is already an ECA.
Okay, I think we're talking the same thing, but two different processes. She's referring to existing processes in place. And then we can add in your item as of concern, or there are ESAs in place.
Sure. But it's all good, I think. That's, I just.
Supersede,
Actually, there's another calendar invite for a follow-up on the River Task Force, so. I'll to bring that messaging forward.
so through Mr. Chair, opposes the potential use of Bill 5 to apply a special economic zone to lands that are already
Requiring an ECA or have, or is that where you're going there?
that are already licensed.
Or zoned.
What's an ECA? Is it a license or a permit?
Environmental like
Environmental.
approval. Already. I'll work on that wording a little bit, but that's the gist of it. I'm gonna say license, but it's not the right word. I'll fix it. Already licensed
Recipient of ECA.
through provincial approvals,
Yeah, just work on it.
such as, and I'll say it again. Any area license. Or ECA.
Everybody comfortable? Other comments? You good?
Yes, yeah.
All in favor? Scary. So that's 6/9 and 6/10?
Yeah.
Put my page. What do we have, a public meeting? May 28th, 2025 at 7 p.m., which is tonight. Public information meeting held in person at the municipal office, 7404 Lines Road 34. And by electronic participation through Zoom regarding the major site alteration application P11-MAR-4670, Side Road 10 North. Okay, anything from Clifton Fire. Municipal insurance, procurement, Hassan.
Good afternoon, council. So this report here is just based on previous council direction, just to report back on our processes for municipal insurance renewals and the procurement processes associated with that. I looked at also what other municipalities do as it relates to municipal procurement, and so that's all been incorporated in the report as well. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Yeah, so it's to receive the report and the council authorize the purchasing and procurement of goods and services and disposal of surplus policy to be amended to include insurance as a discretionary procurement process as determined by the Director of Finance and the Chief Administrative Officer.
Are you gonna move it, please? Councilor Spoulos, Councilor Hurst, questions or comments for Citizen? Councilor Spoulos?
Yes, in the response to comments, staff indicated they're going to provide several criteria when they determine whether to issue RFP. Its criteria would be such as requiring a 10% increase every 5 years. Any concerns regarding level of service and significant changes in market conditions. I was wondering if you're having a sort of run-of-the-mill procurement process, all these comments wouldn't be addressed. Is there a possibility of just saying we've done this and this is we're proceeding on the basis that things are in accordance with that we don't trigger these conditions?
I think through our annual insurance renewal report, we will look at all of that and advise council that we did look at all of that, and that's why we're recommending we proceed as such. But yeah, we could incorporate that in our annual insurance renewal report.
We appreciate that. And then there's a last paragraph saying that there's a 6% increase for 2026. So are you seeking approval of this report, or are you going to have a separate report coming through?
So that's just an estimate at this point. But at an upcoming meeting when we actually receive what the actual increase is, we will seek approval at that time. It's usually in October or November.
Great, thank you.
All in favor? It's carried. Great, annual building report. That'll be Andrew. Oh, no, this one's Mary. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this report is actually the financial implications associated with the building department that's required as part of the Building Code Act. Andrew's here as well to answer any questions. It was a joint effort between both Andrew and I. We would be happy to answer any of council's questions regarding this annual report that's provided.
I get the resolution read, please?
Yes, so it's to receive for information.
Move it, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spoulos, questions? Okay. No, it's a good report. Alarming in the sense that, you know, our single family home starts are down and we're seeing a deficit, which is some of the driving factor for trying to get more growth to the township. So I just want you to know that that's not unnoticed. And we're making efforts to, you know, get more growth for the township, as you're well aware. Postage by Design, you know, the rural growth report, I believe, is coming from the county in June. So that'll June 18th meeting. So that's good news, and we'll see what that brings, and hopefully we can see these numbers start to increase to even out these budget lines. So thanks for all the hard work. And we're second, right?
We do.
Okay, all in favor? It's carried. All right, Mrs. San, I assume?
Yes.
Final tax levy?
Yes, so this is just our regular final tax levy and rates report and bylaw in order to allow us to bill for our final tax rates. And it's also outlining the tax bill due dates of August 29th and October 31st for the final tax bill. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Great, thank you. Resolution, please.
So that we receive the report and that the final property tax rates as identified in Schedule B and C of the report be approved, and that the final property tax due dates be established as Friday, August 29th, 2025, and Friday, October 31st, 2025. And that council give 3 readings to bylaw number 2025-051, being a bylaw for the levy and collection of property taxes for the 2025 taxation year.
Mover, Councilor Goida?
Yeah.
Split. All right, any questions for Mrs. Sam? Councilor Hurst?
Just one from my standpoint, it's not specific to the timelines, it's more just in light of the potential Canada Post strike and the issuance of the tax notices. Is there any opportunity or provision that can be, I realize now they're done all snail mail. And forgive me for not knowing the regulatory environment here around issuing those, but can they be done electronically in any manner in the event that there's a prolonged mail strike and or to reduce postage costs to the municipality for willing homeowners that choose to receive their tax bill electronically versus in the mail?
Very good question and very good timing. Actually, our finance department, Michelle, and the tax team are actually working on an initiative right now with our current system to implement the emailing of tax bills. So we will be rolling that out shortly with the communications team. And so perfect timing with that question. Just because of all the uncertainty with Canada Post, we just figured it's a good time to roll that out.
Fantastic. Look forward to seeing that. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
On the same line, I had forwarded an email from a resident that was requesting that type of service. And so I'm glad to hear that we're moving that direction. And I may have missed it, but if we have not, can we respond to that resident and indicate that we're working towards that program? Please?
Yes. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Okay, all in favor? It's carried. Are we doing benefits first, or are we doing heritage? Yep. All right, so the township group benefits is the next one. All right, so again, Mrs. Ann.
This was a report actually prepared jointly by our human resources generalist Madison and Courtney and I. And so this just came out of some of the recommendations that came out of our compensation and benefits review in 2024, as well as our review of our benefits compared to other municipalities as per council's previous direction. We also looked at the life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, long-term disability, and short-term disability benefits to ensure that equitability for all employees. So that's been analyzed in this report with some recommendations around that, as well as the naturopath, vision care, and orthodontics benefits just based on the review completed by ML Consulting. That's all been outlined in the report as well. And a recommendation to increase the termination age for members of council just to ensure that all members of council do have the opportunity to have those benefits that are applicable to members of council to them as well. Yeah, so I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions, Courtney, myself, or Madison.
We just have a mover and seconder for the recommendation as presented in the report. Councilor Goy, Councilor Hurst, that's all that's left. All right, questions or comments on that one? Councilor Hurst.
No, good, a lot of really good background analysis. I appreciate that.
All right, Councilor Goy.
Yeah, really good report, and also really, I think it's really great that the termination age is bumped up to 85 and there's no additional premium for that, so I think that's a big win. Really good.
Should we just move the age to 100? Just with anticipation of future? Sorry, I was thinking of that. No, I think it's good. It's about equity, equality. Glad we're doing it and appreciate staff time on it. So all in favor? That's carried. Okay, welcome back, Council Willis. Glad to hear you sticking around till you're 100.
And you'll be 80 by now.
70. Moving on, 9.3. All right. You're up.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide council with the heritage designation bylaws of the 7 properties included and all in accordance with section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act.
All right. What are the recommendations?
So through Mr. Chair, the recommendation is outlined in the report. If there's no changes, then as presented.
So okay, we'll move in front, please. Councilor Goida, Councilor Willis, any questions? Mr. Chair?
Good job. Well done, Laura.
Councilor Willis?
Just the one, you're gonna take out the error that was in the bylaw.
Correct, yes.
Great, all in favor? That's carried. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next one, 9.3.2, Justine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide council with the proposed delegation request for the 2025 AMO conference and to seek council's direction with regards to submitting these requests. The requests included in the report are from what council discussed at the May 7th, 2025 council meeting.
So, it's the resolution is 5.
That the report be received and the council direct staff to submit the email delegation request as outlined in the report.
You move it, please. Mr. Willis, Councilor Hurst. Questions or comments?
Sounds good.
Sorry, I lost track there. We're AMO delegations, right?
Correct.
I do have a comment. The one for the MTO. It's not really said on there about the bypass, and I know we get sick of talking about it, but I do think that continues to be a huge priority for this community. And I don't know, I just feel like we should be using every possible opportunity we can to talk about that and advocate for that and how it, like that auditor's general report had it as a priority and keeps getting bumped down, and now there's talk about this possible tunnel below River One, and maybe that gets bumped up, and this gets bumped back. I think we need to just keep hammering.
So what if we, instead of mentioning the bypass specifically, we say the hydro tower construction raising, which there's, well, I thought it would have been started by now. I thought it was spring of 25, which is related to the bypass. And we bring our concerns with the traffic congestion on 401 between the 6s. Or some along those lines, and then it is about the bypass and the traffic and all those things. Maybe we'll just be more likely to get in front of the right people if it's not the same request.
Whatever angle you feel is best, every opportunity that we can talk about it for whatever benefit or to resolve whatever issue, I think it's important to do that.
So through Mr. Chair, earlier this week, we had a meeting with the city of Guelph around transportation, and they proposed, they are also delegating at AMO to the MTO. They're putting together their request to advocate for the bypass. They're working on some transportation related studies coming out of some of their strategic plans. And so they had asked if we would provide them with sort of our position on the bypass, and they would incorporate it into their submission and sort of have that joint advocacy. So we of course said yes, we have all those materials prepared, and so it will be coming forward in that way during AMO, and maybe that's something to mention when if we are successful with this delegation.
There's also an organized Queens Park Day down at Queens Park, sorry. And that's good. And Greg Davison, the mayor of Mapleton, has been spearheading this, and we have the MTO confirmed, so I believe it's the mayors, it's 7 years going. 7 mayors, we have 5 or 6 ministers confirmed currently, that's June 2nd.
Tuesday next week, Monday next week.
And MTO is one of them, so we will be taking the opportunity to speak to it there, but yeah. What is, sorry,
Are you concerned that if we put that in the request, that it'd be more likely turned down? Is that angle?
that's why I was trying
I
to
see. I see.
change the narrative a little bit, but
Yeah,
it's the
I hear
same
you.
topic.
I hear you. Get it in there, so
Even the beautification, all of that beautification downtown more, all that's part of.
it ties into.
So we can take it as takeaway that, so the next short period, we're gonna be in problem quite a bit, so if that brings you some comfort. I suppose.
Yeah, with respect to the gravel pits, I was wondering if you want to reference the provincial auditors report where they state they have a justification for more gravel pits. In other words, make reference to that as part of the argument.
Sure.
And it's a tangential issue, but I wonder if you want to discuss the shipping from one municipality to ours, the wear and tear on the roads.
Brought that up at the TAMO meeting. Well, earlier this week, very much so on my radar, so we can bring it all. At this delegation specifically, yes, this is a very local issue. May touch on it when we're down there at Queens Park, but yeah, that was brought up at the executive meeting. I highlighted it. TAMO was put in for delegations with MNR and other MMAH and MECP. And they're touching on topics that we have concerns with, excess soil, depots or liquid depots, blending, yes, so, sorry, long answer I was going on, short answer is, yes, we're part of it, so.
Okay, and the last issue was the respect to the MDS. I understand the argument put forward here with respecting to residential units. You buy a house near a farm that has manure, it's up to you to figure that out. But what happens if ICI sector moves into a rural area with respect to MTS? Because in the past, you sort of, we sort of said, well, we don't want somebody here, say, MTS won't let you here.
Mr. Chair,
Sort of flip around, please, Guardian.
I'd want to get a better understanding because I believe the MDS applies to sensitive land uses, and I'm not sure how
I see,
non-residential are defined, if there's still that same sort of sensitive land use.
Well, okay, if you have an ICI beside say, poultry farm, there is an MDS calculation that will limit how far that industrial use can be.
it's less than the residential group.
Well, I realize that, yeah. So I'm just concerned that it might backfire on us way too.
So we could just specify that we're looking to, so what's driving this is, what I see in the planning world is you have an existing facility, barn, farm, and, proposed lot severance, and it doesn't meet MDS. And the reason why they have that in place is that they want to protect the farm, right? So if that lot gets approved, then this farm can't expand. My position is, well, if you want to buy this lot, that farm could expand and they shouldn't be prevented. So that's kind of-
I accept that argument, Mr. Mayor, it's just that I'm just worried about the converse.
So if we just put in there and, whether it's specific to sensitive land use or, lot creation in the rural and try to scope it down, like not looking to change MDS for ICI, but just rural, residential MDS, something along those lines, and have those conversations, because I just don't think, it's just not fair to the farmer that they can't expand, but we also need houses, so as far as, if you buy the house, a lot near the farm, it could have 100 head, or it could go to 150, I don't know. Shouldn't matter, don't restrict the farmer. So can we just scope it down to rural, or how could we?
Through Mr. Chair, yeah, we can work on that a little bit and just make it a little bit more clear what our intent is.
I think I've already babbled out my thoughts, so we have a lot of opportunity to speak to ministers in the next future, so that's good. So, as amended,
As amended, it's, yeah.
all right, all in favor? It's carried. We did reporting out, right? That was with Stan.
I think we're on the tender results.
And the results. Did I miss something? All right. All right, Mr. Fowler.
Through the chair, this report is for the 2025 asphalt tender results. The successful bidder was Cox Construction. Happy to take any questions council may have.
So, is there a recommendation?
So it's to receive the report that the tender for the 2025 asphalt program be awarded to Cox Construction Limited at their tendered amount of $1,493,790, inclusive of the non-refundable portion of HST. And the council authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the required contract documents.
And move it, please, Councilor Hurst, Mr. Lewis. Questions or comments for Mr. Fowler? Yes, oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
just the comment that it was below estimates, so that's encouraging.
Yeah, it's great news.
Yeah, and to get back on that, it's gonna help our asset management plan by staff $1 million and starts reducing the negative amount in later years.
Yeah. Helps us on the contribution deficit, right? So it's good. It's good news. And it's still a very ambitious paving program. I feel we do good work here. With some, I got a sample of one municipality, but for a little operation, I feel like you're doing a great job, Matthew, Mike. Sorry. Sorry, did I skip over you?
No, I'm good.
Great, all in favor? It's carried. 10.1. This is just for information, right? Okay, so I gotta go for that in a second here, Councilor, go ahead, Councilor Willis. Great, any questions or comments around this one? Councilor Hurst, anything?
No, sorry. I'm trying to find it.
10.1, Bill 17, Protect Ontario Building.
Yes, this is the one that the ERO is asking for comments with respect to what studies should be included in the future, and I put forward my suggested comments, but then the staff put together a big list of comments, a big list of studies that should be done as part of the studies that they should be provided. And also the ERO asked for what about what type of professionals do you need to address all that? And as far as I'm concerned, there are quite a few professionals, including traffic engineer, hydrogeologist, geotechnical engineer, ecologist, planner. So and a comment with respect to the staff, one that you can share your comments there.
Yeah, so there was in the council Q&A section, there was the list of studies that the County of Wellington's OP includes, which would be more than what the Planning Act regulations require. So that's listed there and is sectioned back to the OPA. And then further, what staff have, we worked with our consultant on this as well. And so the concerns with respect to the potential limitation of the requirement of studies, which would be deemed complete, these supporting documents are fundamental in determining the merits of the application and determining the appropriateness of a specific property. And so staff agree with the studies that have been identified in that listing for council's inclusion in the township's comments, and would like to seek direction from council to consult with the township's planning consultants regarding any additional studies that would be included. So we'd like to sort of take this as a jumping off point, work with our planning consultant and formulate maybe a comment summary that puts all of this together. And then further, staff do have concerns with the lack of clarity around the process to receive additional studies following an application being deemed complete, and how this might impact the decision timeline. So for instance, if through the more fulsome application review, something else comes up as being required, what does that look like in terms of being able to require that of the applicant? If studies are not required for an application to be deemed complete, but are needed by the municipality to review the merits of the application, it may lead to further inefficiencies with the planning review process and could lead to costly OLT appeals. We saw this a little bit with one of the previous legislative changes where you had to have a comprehensive pre-con and you couldn't then add after the pre-con stage. And so it sort of front-ended a process and caused further delays. And this is along the same lines of what staff are concerned we'd see. And then for the VPRO related to the minor variance, with the 10%, there's no concerns with that, but we would not support any further increases to the as of right variance percentage. So I think what we're looking for is directions to maybe summarize what was in the Q&A with our planning consultant and submit those on.
All right. Second, Councilor Hurst, any questions or comments? Councilor Goga?
No, I'm good.
One thing I'm gonna ask you, and I could do it, but maybe when sitting around here, can you forward this Bill 17 to the clerks at the county and mention that the mayor/chair of planning has asked this be included on the planning committee agenda for feel that it's be of utmost importance to accounting for DC related changes and so. But appreciate that. Okay. Very cool, favor. And we did 10.2, we did 10.3. So we're gonna move on to 10.4, so that this way comes in a job. All right, so next one is 10.5 for information. May your mover and seconder, please. Let's go ahead, Councilor Lewis. Comments on this one? Soon there's only gonna be the section in Whistlish that's not been upgraded. They're gonna run out of time. They're gonna have to do it, right? You know?
There's a tick on mine on June 12th. Interesting.
Seems to happen in this thing. We've seen this before where they're, yeah, there it is.
You, Mr. Chair, if I might, the product team has also offered to make a presentation to council at the July. Sorry.
All the council, for me, I don't think it comes into Whistlish far enough to warrant that, but I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I'd like to see the next one after that.
Yes.
Is the one I'm looking for.
I think we could follow up with that as say, council's very interested in timing on the next phase, which would be fully encompassed in Whistlish. I would also ask, my first thought was, emergency access, if the line was near Watson, but even at Milton Town line, maybe the fire chief, I know I did not give you a heads up on this, but I think having one of those gates that they have way down on the west side of the 401, where, you know, I assume only emergency access and maintenance people have a key to. If they're reconstructing this, then to have them comment on that component, if they're gonna install an emergency access point, because it's a long haul for either department. For Milton to come all the way up here and vice versa.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, I think the meeting was about 2 weeks ago, so those concerns were both addressed by myself and Milton Fire already. So they were gonna put something together for the next meeting and give us an idea.
Okay, if you would mind, if you here bringing that back to council, I appreciate that for sure.
Well, that's good.
Okay, I was wondering, in lieu of MTO showing up here at the 17th, can we just get their presentation? On council?
If you want them here, I just don't.
I don't think it's warranted, but certainly I think our residents who abut that portion of the highway might be interested.
Fair.
Maybe just to build on that, if they are doing a public meeting for Milton residents, even just notice of when that meeting is, if it's a virtual meeting, it can be shared with interested parties, right?
Is that the pic you were talking about?
Yeah, there is a notice here that the pick will be available from May 29th to June 25th, and it's online.
Okay.
And I was wondering if whatever pick materials are, if they can just put it on the July council meeting information.
Even if, when, I know social media folks are busy, but even a little push of, hey, Postage residents, this pick is, coming to you on X date. Yes, we have the presentation, then, yeah, probably good, so we can review it.
Just a presentation, sure, so
Yeah,
only question.
Good. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. What the pages like crazy. Did I miss some pages? There are council reports. Put this over the. As I mentioned earlier, Tamil Island's executive, or executive meeting, board meeting. And we discussed email submissions, and some just regular order of business work plan for the executive director. He's gonna get out and present to the top 10 producing municipalities. I think there was some discussion around public engagement. One I really want to speak to, and feel like I'm driving the school bus on this one, is I presented to the board concept to create a rehabilitation award for area producers. That we would partner, we in Tamil would partner with an NGO. And then this award would be handed out, and very much so, you know, Tamil would be just say the sponsor agency. And the NGO or whatever they would be, the group would design most of the criteria. Tamil would have some input on the criteria. They would do the reviews and, you know, set the standards, all of that good stuff. And then, you know, either bring 1, 2, or 3 candidates or have one recommendation, all those details need to be worked out. But the board was supportive of the executive director and exploring that. So I reached out to a group yesterday or the day before, and we have tentatively scheduled next Friday for the first meeting to start this process of developing a rehabilitation work with the executive director. So I thought it was well received after the Tamil meeting. Continue to mention our concerns around compliance, site compliance. The message I brought was that compliance is twofold. It's wonderful if you tell them they're not in compliance, but we need tangible action after that. You can't just continue to let the non-compliance continue. There were a lot of talk about how many inspectors that were brought on. Anyway, so it was a relatively good meeting, well received. The rural growth update is coming June 18th. So I believe it's going on the planning committee agenda for this meeting, then when it comes to the city council, so excited to see that. What else are we working on? Oh, the Queens Park Day I already mentioned, Mayor Greg Davison has organized that, so Courtney and I have a very early morning Monday. I have bad news. I was speaking to Greg and he says currently, without all ministers confirmed, our last one is at 3:30 on Monday. So the first one's at 8:30, and so it's going to be a very long day. So your significant other will have to be on duty that day. Or your mother, father, somebody. It's going to be a long day, unfortunately, trying to get out of Toronto at 4:30, if you have to leave. Anyways, so, but it's good news that we have a bunch of ministers. Oh, this is good, I think. The county opened their Arthur Works garage. And what a beautiful facility. And it's pretty big, but it's very nice. So I think I want to get some updates on when the garage for the county will be improved over here. When I came on council in 2018, it was on the 10-year plan. 6 years later, it's on the 10-year plan. So I'd like to get a better indication when that, because if it's anything like the one in Arthur, it'll be beautiful and serve the community well. But no, I don't think we really have anything else. Anything I missed on the town meeting? Okay.
Just a question, what garage next door, is that already designed and ready to go? So is there an opportunity for us to look at cohabitating out of there with our works people and providing more space here for our expansion?
We've had those high level discussions. Initially. Counties very much so they wanna own it and we have to lease it off them or rent it. I feel like the arrangement that would be demanded would not suit our needs, but I feel. If I can get it, if it gets closer or shorter on the 10-year plan, we can definitely revisit those conversations to see if there's something we can cohabitate on. But when we first visited, the requirements of the county didn't suit our needs, so. Unless Mr. Fowler has anything to add other than that.
I have no comment at this time.
Alright. Okay, anything further? So we'll move to second to receive the mayor's updates. Councilor Spillis, Councilor Harrison, all in favor? Councilors have any updates? Great, so we don't do anything with that one. Bylaws.
Right, so there's a number of bylaws today. So the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2025-051 being a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of property taxes for the 2025 taxation year. Bylaw 2025-052 being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property located at 4422 Wellington Road 32 in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act. Bylaw 2025-053 being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property located at 6710-6714 Wellington Road 34 in accordance with the Act. Bylaw 2025-054 being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property located at 7735 Leslie Road West in accordance with the Act. Bylaw 2025-055 being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property at 8 Brock Road North in accordance with the Act. Bylaw 2025-056 being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property located at 68 Brock Road North in accordance with the Act. Bylaw 2025-057, again, being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property located at 845 Watson Road South in accordance with the Act. And bylaw 2025-058, being a bylaw to authorize the designation of real property located at 596 Arkle Road in accordance with the Heritage Act.
All right, David, move for that. You're moving it. Councilor Hurst. Spillis, any questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Any announcements? Any public events coming up that were?
The Puss Lynch Lake home tour is coming up, the second Saturday in June.
Sorry, in June. Oh. You attend a function here recently?
Yes, here is to chair. The bike rodeo was held a few weekends ago. It had a really good turnout and some staff from the youth committee also hosted a sort of craft table event, and it's a bit of a hit too, but mostly kudos to the OPP and to that group for Safe Communities for putting that together. It was a really well run event.
So, thanks for doing that. Right, Sid?
Yep, the Aberfoyle Agricultural Society's annual chicken barbecue dinner will be on June 12th.
Yes, tickets are available. It's always a great meal. Okay. Good. And we're going to close it over again. Sure. Pardon? Believe you did.
We did at the beginning. So
Acquisition of land and just, right?
I'll mention it again. So that council should go into closed session under section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of a confidential report regarding the security of property of the municipality or local board. That's in relation to municipal property. Confidential report regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees, and that's a procedural matter. And a confidential report regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and that's in relation to a township road allowance. And then the confidential minutes for the previous.
Get a mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, all in favor? It's carried. All right.
Thank you. Just that one.
Just that.
That one's great, yeah. Oh, and the outside door.
Yeah, the outside door.
I should have to from it.
All right.
Like,
That's
look
what
at
I
my
thought.
things.
I'm like, did I miss some pages? Cause somebody's seeing on the end of the agenda.
When I saw that agenda come out, I'm like, this is gonna be a 4:30,
I
type of day.
Okay, Ms. Whitlock, you have some recommendations coming out of close.
Yes, the council moves into open session at 2:31 PM.
Your move, please, Councilor Doyle, Councilor Spillis, all in favor? It's carried. Next.
Yep, the council receives the confidential report regarding the security of property of municipality or local board, that's in relation to municipal property. Confidential report regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal and local board employees, and that's in relation to a procedural matter. And the confidential verbal report regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, it's in relation to a township road allowance and minutes from the previous board meeting.
Mover, please, Councilor Spillis, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? It's carried. Business arising from the closed session. None, you know, some motion. None as well, new business, Ms. Whitefox.
Yes, thank you. So on council's agenda package, was the follow-up from previous council direction about proposing, a motion for, the lane reduction on Brock Road. So we've, through the council Q&A, we did receive a number of recommended updates to the motion for council's consideration. So Mayor, I'm not sure if you'd like me to just display it or how you would like us to go through.
Oh, we don't read that whole thing, do we?
I can display it on the screen
Please
and
do.
I've highlighted those revised sections in red for council's consideration.
Oh, yeah. You just want to scroll to the red for the video purposes. I don't know how well it picks it up on the video. Maybe you could just give a brief summary of what the resolution is capturing for the people that view the video on YouTube.
Certainly. So the first few paragraphs here are a preamble just leading into the council's motion. So this is in relation to the county road diet that was a part of the road master action plan in 2018. Part of that analysis did identify a lane reduction from 4 lanes to 2 lanes with a turning center lane and some parking on Brock Road. What this motion does is a comparison between the EA done on County Road 124 and those upgrades to that road. It compares the traffic counts on that road, the capacity to volume ratio as well. An important point is we've also received quite a bit of feedback from the community around this lane reduction and what it would mean to them from a business perspective, as well as from a community perspective in that area as well. This highlighted in red here is just a revision, a minor revision to the proposed motion, requesting that a reevaluation of the road diet be considered after the completion of the mid-block interchange, just so that there's accurate information on how that new infrastructure is supporting transportation in the area. This is just a depiction of what the before and after would look like. Further, after the analysis, just the recommendation and the request to the county has been revised slightly. So as it was stated previously, we were asking for the lane reduction to take place based on the information from the roads master action plan. And what this request does is instead ask for the county to conduct the road diet study in 2026, which will give the analysis as to whether that recommendation is supported.
Great, can I get a move, please? Any questions or revisions? All in favor? That's carried, good job. Leave or sort of line rather than one. Page to see. Oh, there it is. Hold down, yeah, 17.2.
You want me to-
I'll go first. So, if you recall, we had the GRCA CAO come and Mayor White attend virtually for was it the grant of the budget? Can't quite remember. And, Mayor White is no longer the chair of GRCA. And, he's been serving as our representation since my first term, 2018. And so in that meeting, I mentioned it to him and I've had discussions with him that I'm interested in learning more about the conservations and how they work. So I asked him if, he'd, allow me to be our representative. And through those discussions, he suggested he reminded me that the 3-member municipalities have to pass a resolution of council, that being us, Guelph, Hermosa, and Erin. So once I had Mayor White's blessing that he would, and sorry, I'll back up. The history is, and he's been around long enough, is that the representative for the 3 municipalities rotates. And he got it from Erin, and it was his turn, and his position was now it's Puslinch's turn to be the representative. So I then contacted Mayor Dane to see if I was going to be offending him in any way, and he said no. And so the first step is to have Puslinch affirm that you're comfortable with me being the representative, then that same resolution would go to Guelph, Hermosa, and Erin to ensure that that they're supportive of it. So this is the first step, and on Mayor White's advice, he would like to, we weren't sure when we get in front of everybody, and I believe he wanted to get through the summer break and be able to say goodbyes in September, and then I take the role. I believe it says October 1st, and I don't remember if it's in there, but he said the term goes till December. I'm assuming that's around the same as the election, because there could be a new member, you have to revisit the appointment, so the term is from October 1st to December 6th or 9th. And that's it. So the next step would be to, I guess, forward it on to Guelph, Hermosa, and Erin for their endorsement. So we have questions?
Yeah, I just wonder if we can put that in the motion, just be forward to quote Hermosa and Erin for their consideration.
So I have a motion here. It's whereas Mayor Chris White was appointed to the Grand River Conservation Authority Board as the representative for the township of Puslinch, Guelph, Hermosa, and Town of Erin. And whereas Mayor White intends to step down from his position in October of 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that the township of Puslinch thank Mayor White for his service as a GRCA representative. And that the township of Puslinch endorse the appointment of Mayor James Seeley to the GRCA board as a representative for the township of Puslinch, township of Guelph, Hermosa, and Town of Erin, and that this resolution be forwarded to those municipalities accordingly for their support.
So okay, move for it. That's great, Councilor Lewis. Any further questions? All in favor? For that support. Now we are where? I got one page on this stuff, affirmatory bylaw.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2025-059 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of Township of Puslinch at its meeting held on the 28th day of May 2025.
Councilor Hurst, Lewis, all in favor? Spirit and adjournment.
Council hereby adjourns at 2:39.
Mr. Lewis, sorry, it's reading something. Councilor Hurst, all in favor? Carried. That's it.